So imagine walking into, like, this pristine Arthurian legend.
Right.
You know, you have the misty valleys, the chivalric code, the whole expectation of a magical lady waiting in a crystalline lake to, I don't know, bestow a legendary sword upon a pure-hearted knight.
The classic setup.
Exactly. You are fully prepared for the fairy tale. But instead, when you push through the reeds, the woman you find isn't some ethereal spirit. She is, well, she's a traumatized, exhausted special ops soldier.
Oh, yeah.
And she's violently scrubbing the blood of her dead friends out of her tactical gear.
Oh, and she swears at you like a seasoned sailor.
It is a complete and utter collision of realities. I mean, that collision is precisely the engine driving the sources we're exploring today.
Right.
We're looking at a collection of fragmented historical accounts, geopolitical treaties, and interdimensional narratives. And they all circle around this young woman named Ciri.
Yeah, she's basically a dimension-hopping refugee. Exactly. A refugee, the carrier of a highly sought-after genetic mutation, and, a survivor navigating a universe that actively wants to consume her.
And for everyone listening, we aren't just looking at her story in a vacuum.
No, not at all.
The material you've provided also covers the sweeping, brutal geopolitical fallout of the Northern Wars, which culminates in a massive treaty known as the Peace of Sintra.
Right, the macro-level stuff.
Yeah. So our mission for this deep dive today is to basically tear down the aesthetic illusions of this world. We're going to unpack a dense, chaotic stack of lore.
It is so dense.
It really is. We're going to look at the mechanics of multiversal eugenics, the shift from military to economic imperialism, and the grim reality of what happens to the pawns when the kings finish playing their game.
I mean, to understand the sheer scale of the deception in this universe, we really have to examine that opening encounter you just mentioned.
Oh, for sure. With Galahad.
Yeah, we have Galahad, who is this 19-year-old knight from Camelot, riding into the misty Koa Valley. And he is a product of his environment, right? Mm-hmm.
He's entirely conditioned by bardic tales and romanticized chivalry. So when he sees a woman with ash-colored hair bathing in a sapphire lake, and she's accompanied by this pitch-black mare she calls Kelpie.
His brain just, maps this onto the only framework he knows.
Exactly. He literally kneels in the wet sand, fully expecting her to hand him a magic sword.
Which is wild. He's asking about the Holy Grail, the Bleeding Lance, Merlin. He is completely trapped in his own genre.
He really is.
But Ciri's reaction is what fascinates me, because she doesn't just politely correct him, She aggressively shatters his paradigm.
Oh, completely.
She realizes he thinks she's a Dian-side like a fairy or an elf, and she immediately sinks into the water and just curses at him. And the sources are very specific here.
Yep.
She swears with a level of filth that would make a stable man blush.
Well, that vulgarity serves a distinct mechanical purpose in the text, I think.
How so?
It grounds the scene. Like, Galahad is searching for the ethereal, right?
Yeah.
But Ciri forces him to confront the visceral.
Oh, that makes sense. He looks closer and realizes she doesn't have the pointed ears of an elf. And far more shockingly, he sees this massive, hideous scar disfiguring her cheek.
Right, yeah.
And the garment she's washing, it isn't woven from moonlight or whatever. It's a blouse stiff with dried blood.
Which leads to this dialogue that is just a brilliant masterclass in talking past one another.
Oh, that's so uncomfortable to read.
It is.
Yeah.
Galahad proudly points to this tiny superficial nick on his face from a duel, treating it like this shiny metal.
Like a badge of honor.
Exactly. But Ciri just looks at him, totally deadpan, and tells him she has been swimming in blood lately.
Yeah.
The blood of people she has killed, and the blood of friends who died in her arms while she tried to save them.
She takes the romanticization of violence that Galahad represents and forces him to look at the actual trauma of it.
It's like walking into a Renaissance fair expecting to meet a princess, but you actually bump into a hardened special ops soldier washing shrapnel out of her gear.
That is the perfect analogy. It completely disrupts the traditional hero's journey. She tells him she is from Rivia, casually mentioning places like Nilfgaard and Redonia.
Places he's never heard of.
Right. And she explains that she has this confused destiny. She cannot return to her own world. And when she tries to explain why, she introduces Galahad to the elven concept of the Ouroboros.
The snake biting its own tail.
Exactly.
Let's dig into the mechanics of that, actually, because the Ouroboros isn't just a cool metaphor here. It seems to be the literal physics of how time operates for her.
It really is.
She tells them the past, present, and future are all lurking in a single moment. The circle is closed. Galahad admits he has absolutely no idea what she's talking about, and honestly, I don't blame him.
No, it's a lot to wrap your head around.
How does cyclical time actually function for someone physically jumping between dimensions?
Well, it functions as a complete rejection of linear consequence.
Okay.
In Galahad's world, you do a noble deed and you receive a noble reward in the future. Cause and effect, a straight line. But the Ouroboros dictates that every point on the circle is both a beginning and an end simultaneously. For Ciri, time isn't a river she's floating down, it's an ocean she is drowning in.
Wow.
Her trauma isn't in the past. It is constantly happening concurrently with her present and her future.
That makes her mention of the Tower of the Swallows so much darker, because she tells Galahad she was a prisoner by a lake, and that her captors were the ones who actually gave her the title Lady of the Lake.
Yeah.
It's a title of imprisonment, not divinity. So Ciri mentions she was a prisoner by a lake. How does she go from being a captive of elves to hanging out in Arthurian legend?
That perfectly mirrors the aesthetic deception we see when we look at exactly who captured her and what they wanted.
Right, the Arnel.
Yes. The sources take us back to the world of the Arnel, the ancient alderfolk. Ciri is trapped in their capital city, Tir na Lia.
And on the surface, it sounds amazing.
It's arguably the most beautiful location described in the entire lore. We are talking about alabaster palaces, weeping willows suspended over crystal rivers, architecture that looks like fragile, ethereal apparitions.
It's so visually overwhelming that she literally cries when she first sees it.
She does.
But the beauty is entirely weaponized. It's a velvet-lined bear trap. No matter how far she rides her horse away from the city, there's this invisible magical barrier.
The Gaithgareth.
Right, the Gaithgareth. It effortlessly loops her trajectory right back to where she started.
The barrier is a physical manifestation of their psychological control. And she is assigned a guide, an elven sage named Avalash.
Oh, this guy.
He speaks in riddles, plays a flute, and treats Ciri with this suffocating, polite condescension.
It's infuriating.
When she finally breaks down and smashes these ancient, priceless elven mirrors in her room in a fit of rage, Avalash doesn't even raise his voice. He just shrugs and notes that they are merely objects.
He weaponizes his immortality against her.
Exactly.
By refusing to validate her anger, he completely strips her of her agency. Like, to an immortal elf, waiting 8 weeks or 8 years for her to calm down is nothing.
It's a blink of an eye.
But for a human who measures life in hours and days, it's a terrifying psychological pressure cooker.
And then we get to the core of why she is in this alabaster prison in the first place.
Right.
They want her to have a child.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because they don't just want her to have a child with anyone.
No, not just anyone. They demand she conceive a child with their elder king, Oberon Myrstad.
Which is so messed up.
They construct this elaborate historical justification, claiming Ciri owes them a debt because her human ancestor Cregennan supposedly seduced and stole the elven sorceress Lara Doran.
But the underlying mechanics of their demand are entirely pragmatic.
Right.
And deeply disturbing.
Very disturbing. They are facing a localized apocalypse. The elves believe the world Ciri comes from is scheduled for total annihilation by the White Frost, which is this catastrophic glaciation.
A literal ice age that just kills everything.
Yes. And the ABNL used to possess the ability to open the Ardgaith, the Great Gate, which allowed them to move millions of people across dimensions.
But they lost it.
They lost that genetic key, but they know Ciri's bloodline, the Elder Blood, carries a mutated version of it.
They're basically treating her like a prize racehorse to breed a multiversal taxi driver.
That is a very blunt way to put it, but yes. They need her child to act as a biological master key to the multiverse. Their plan is to regain the power of mass interdimensional travel, to evacuate their people, and quite likely to conquer new worlds.
Right.
It is an explicit program of forced eugenics masked by beautiful poetry and tragic historical grievances.
Okay, I want to play devil's advocate here for a second for you listening, because this is where the ethics get incredibly murky.
Oh, absolutely.
The White Frost isn't a political threat, It's a fundamental force of nature that is going to freeze billions of living creatures to death. So from a purely utilitarian standpoint, the AGI and LI are looking at a cosmic trolley problem. Do you sacrifice the bodily autonomy and psychological well-being of one human girl to save an entire civilization?
Mm-hmm.
In their minds, aren't they just making the hard, necessary mathematical choice?
That is exactly the justification they use to sleep at night. But the texts reveal the hypocrisy of that utilitarian argument through the character of King Oberon himself.
How so?
Well, if this was truly just a grim, necessary mathematical sacrifice for survival, Oberon would fulfill his duty with grim efficiency. But he doesn't.
No, he really doesn't.
When Ciri goes to his chambers, terrified but willing to cooperate just to buy her freedom, Oberon is physically and psychologically unable to perform.
The atmosphere in those chambers is suffocating. He sits there, literally blowing iridescent soap bubbles, watching them pop with this profound ancient boredom.
He possesses a level of stagnation that borders on paralysis.
And it's not just age, right?
No, that stagnation is rooted in intense, deeply ingrained racial supremacy. Oberon doesn't see Ciri as a tragic necessity. He sees her as a filthy animal.
Wow.
He refers to humans, the Dawn, as primitive, hairy beasts who destroy every environment they touch. Even though she is dressed in silks and perfumed, he tells her she is like a gold nugget resting in a pile of compost.
That is horrible.
Or a diamond on a rotting corpse. He cannot bring himself to touch her because his racism overrides his civilization's survival instinct.
That completely dismantles the noble sacrifice argument. It's not cold utility, it's just pure arrogance.
Exactly.
And this creates an incredible political vulnerability. You have an absolute monarch who is failing at the single biological task required to save his species.
Nature abhors a vacuum.
And so does politics. Which brings us to Eridan. But what is Eridan's alternative to this awkward royal breeding program? He offers her a way out, right?
Well, Eridan embodies the ruthless military pragmatism that Oberon lacks. He intercepts Ciri and shatters the illusion that Oberon will ever let her go. He tells her they will simply keep her in the golden cage until she dies.
But he offers her something.
Yes, he offers her a small vial of a potent narcotic called fistic.
He tells her it's an aphrodisiac. But the subtext is screaming at us. He wants her to dose the king.
Exactly. Whether he intends for the fistic to merely force the king into action, or if he intends for it to trigger a fatal overdose in an ancient, fragile elf, the mechanism is the same. Eridan is staging a soft coup.
Right.
Ciri, maintaining her moral boundaries, refuses to slip it into his drink.
Good for her.
But the agonizing irony is that Oberon, crushed by his own inadequacy and desperation, finds the vial and takes it himself.
He snorts it off an amber mirror, and the resulting overdose is pathetic rather than tragic.
Yeah, it really is.
He confesses to Ciri that despite being bored by centuries of existence, he is utterly terrified of dying. And then he just dies right there in front of her.
And with his death, the entire political structure of Tyrannalia fractures. The polite, philosophical facade of the Ain El evaporates instantly.
Because Ciri is no longer a necessary vessel. She is a political liability who witnessed the king's humiliating demise.
Eridan ambushes her as she flees on a boat, and he drops all pretense.
Yeah.
He calls her a grain of pepper in exquisite food that forces you to spit the whole bite out. She is a contaminant.
The fight on the boat is such a brilliant shift from the ethereal magic we've seen so far.
It's very gritty.
It's purely physical, dirty, and tactical. Eridan is this massive, heavily armored warrior. Ciri doesn't try to overpower him. She uses the environment. As a boat drifts under a low stone bridge, she distracts him just long enough for him to crack the back of his head against the masonry. It ruins his balance. She slashes his thigh, and he goes over the side into the dark water.
It's a great sequence. And after that, she escapes the city limits and reunites with her horse, Kelpie, and the unicorn, Iwarquax.
And it is in the wilderness outside the city that the sources drop a revelation that completely recontextualizes everything we've just discussed.
This is the moment the aesthetic mask is permanently ripped off.
Yeah. This is a massive aha moment for the listener. The victims are actually the colonizers.
Yes. The unicorns guide Ciri to a ravine where the soil has washed away, revealing a massive ancient burial ground.
But as she looks closer, she realizes the skulls have canine teeth. They aren't elven remains.
No.
It is a sea of human bones.
The telepathic communication from the unicorns explains the grim mechanics of A&L history. The elves are not native to this beautiful pastoral dimension.
They arrive from somewhere else.
They arrived, they found human populations already living there, and they systematically slaughtered them. Millions of them.
It's horrifying.
The alabaster palaces, the weeping willows, the crystal fountains, they are all built directly on top of a foundation of mass genocide.
It is the ultimate calcification of guilt. Like, highly advanced societies often use beautiful aesthetics, art, architecture, polite philosophy, to actively mask their barbaric origins from themselves.
That's a great point.
The Ain El view humans as violent, primitive apes, Yet their entire civilization in this world was birthed from an act of unimaginable industrialized slaughter.
It forces a total reevaluation of the Elder Blood. The elves don't just want the power of the Great Gate to escape the White Frost, they want it to resume their interdimensional colonial expansion.
Oh, wow.
The unicorns recognize Ciri as a weapon of mass destruction. They help her escape not out of pure altruism, but to prevent the Fox Avalak or the Sparrowhawk Eridan from getting their hands on the nuclear launch codes, so to speak.
Okay, so how does she actually escape? Does she just ride her horse into a portal?
Not exactly. She doesn't have a map or a portal gun. The sources describe her jumps through time and space as wild, terrifying, and completely uncontrolled.
She is quite literally throwing her body into the cosmic void.
Yes, the mechanism of her travel is pure, raw, genetic potential without any structural training. It is an agonizing trial and error process. And the narrative uses these jumps to explore the vast, terrifying scale of the multiverse.
Let's talk about these jumps, because they are wild. The first jump drops her directly into a medieval nightmare.
Right.
She materializes over a lake, face to face with a Teutonic knight named Heinrich von Fellborn and a squad of crossbowmen. To them, she is a literal demon appearing out of thin air.
Which, from their perspective, makes total sense.
Yeah, the knight charges her, screaming prayers, and she has to rip herself out of that reality before he cuts her down.
That jump represents the fanaticism of history. The second jump is equally thematic, but entirely different in tone.
Right.
She lands on a beach and interrupts two women, Nimue and Conwerimers. And what you need to understand is that these women are sorceresses from the far future.
Wait, really?
Yes, they are literally studying the legend of Ciri. They are looking at tapestries and debating the mythology, and suddenly the myth bleeds into their reality.
That is bonkers. Imagine studying a historical figure for decades, and they suddenly crash through your ceiling, look around, apologize for having the wrong century, and vanish.
Nimue is screaming for her to stay, realizing she just lost the chance to speak to her life's obsession.
It highlights the immense burden Ciri carries, right? She is a desperate, terrified girl in her present, but an untouchable myth in the future.
Exactly. Now, the third jump exposes the environmental stakes of the multiverse.
This one is bleak.
Very. She arrives in a landscape that is completely corrupted. The ground is like dirty ash, covered in a toxic, stinking garbage dump of popping, decaying vessels.
Yeah.
It leads down to a lake of solidified black pitch beneath a sky lit by distant, unnatural fires.
It's a chilling vision of a dead world. Whether it was destroyed by magic, technology, or the White Frost, it proves that survival is not guaranteed in any dimension.
And jumping blindly isn't just confusing, it's deadly. Which brings us to the fourth jump. Out of all these chaotic jumps, the fourth one is the most deeply tragic because she actually succeeds in targeting her intent.
She focuses entirely on finding her adoptive father, Gerald.
Yes. She lands in the middle of a screaming, blinding blizzard. And she is exactly where she intended to be.
Wait, really?
She is geographically only yards away from Gerald and his traveling companions. But the physics of the storm prevent their reunion.
Oh, that is devastating. The wind is howling so loudly they can't hear her screaming his name.
And Gerald actually senses a presence. His group finds Kelpie's fresh hoof prints in the snow.
But one of his companions rationalizes it away, suggesting it's an ice demon.
Right. And Gerald, who has spent months desperately searching for her, is so cold, exhausted, and broken that he dismisses the tracks. He turns his back and walks into the storm.
She is literally within arm's reach of salvation, and the universe denies it to her.
The psychological toll of that near miss is devastating. Every jump drains her energy and chips away at her sanity.
Which perfectly transitions into the most grounded, terrifying encounter of Ciri's escape.
It really does.
Because she finally lands in a place that feels safe. A warm moor at the edge of a lush, familiar-looking forest. No cosmic horror, no blizzards, no Teutonic nights, just an ordinary woodland.
And this is where the narrative masterfully pulls the rug out from under us.
Yeah.
She meets an old man she refers to as Forest Gramps. He is the quintessential harmless hermit. He's wearing bastel slurs, a straw hat, carrying a wicker basket.
Mm-hmm.
He mumbles pleasantly, offering her a bowl of pearl barley with meat and a place to rest in his cottage.
And he basically weaponizes her exhaustion.
He does.
After fighting off elven supremacist warlords and surviving the freezing void of the multiverse, Ciri lets her guard down for a seemingly benign, pathetic old human.
And the moment she turns her back, he swings a gnarly wooden stick and cracks her in the temple.
She goes down hard.
He hits her again in the stomach, pins her face first in the dirt, and begins tearing at her clothes.
It's awful.
He is slavering, howling about how long it's been since he's had a young girl. It is raw, unvarnished, sickening assault.
Here's where it gets really interesting for the listener, though. It's like surviving a game of 4D chess with alien overlords, only to step outside and get mugged by a guy with a rock.
Yes.
It shows that evil doesn't always wear a beautiful face. The A and L were a threat of cosmic, elegant evil. Forest Gramps represents the banal, dirty, opportunistic evil of the ordinary world.
Exactly. And Ciri tries to fight back, but she is concussed. The only reason she survives is because her horse, Kelpie, silently steps up behind the old man and violently bites his hair, lifting him off the ground.
Wow.
He tears himself loose, leaving a chunk of scalp in the horse's teeth, and grabs the heavy butcher's axe.
He abandons the assault and just screams that he's going to chop her into pieces. But Ciri manages to draw her sword. She dodges the axe swing, severs both of his arms above the elbow, and then cuts his throat.
The immediate danger is neutralized, but the true horror is revealed when Ciri investigates his cottage.
Oh God, the cellar.
She looks at the cauldron of stew he offered her, swimming with chunks of meat. She follows a foul smell to his cellar. Hanging from the rafters is a side of meat.
Yeah.
It is the meat of a human child.
It is deeply sickening. She finds a hollow in the swamp out back filled with human skulls, rib cages, and pelvises.
If his sexual depravity hadn't briefly overridden his hunger, he would have just killed her with the axe from behind the moment they met, and she would have ended up in that stew pot.
By placing this encounter immediately after her multidimensional travel, the sources are making a profound thematic statement.
They really are.
The grand, sweeping forces of destiny and magic are terrifying, but the mundane horrors of humanity are equally capable of destroying you. Ciri burns the cottage to the ground, but the psychological damage of realizing she is safe nowhere is permanent.
Absolutely permanent.
Okay, we have to zoom out here. Because while Ciri is dealing with this endless survival horror, what is happening back in her home world? How is the war ending without her?
Well, it's absolutely fascinating that Ciri is fighting a literal life-or-death battle against a single cannibal in the woods, because back in her home world, the exact same cannibalistic consumption is happening on a macro geopolitical scale.
Right.
While Ciri burns that cottage, the leaders of the world are gathering to sign the Peace of Cintra.
The contrast is staggering. We move from the bloody mud of the swamp to the grand, echoing halls of Cintra.
The Northern King's Foltest, Henselt Demavend, are sitting across a massive table from the Nilfgaardian ambassador, Shallard Fitzostrelin.
After years of a devastating, continent-spanning war that left millions dead, they are finally negotiating peace.
And the way they behave is shockingly petty.
Seriously. You have King Henselt of Cadwin literally turning purple, banging his meaty fists on the table and ripping up maps because he refuses to cede even an inch of land his armies occupy.
It's a room full of massive, fragile egos screaming at each other over lines drawn on parchment, completely insulated from the slaughter that paid for those lines.
But the true power dynamic isn't happening at the table, is it?
No, it is happening directly above it. The Lodge of Sorceresses, a secret cabal of the most powerful magic users, including Philippa Eilhart and Francesca Findabair, are sitting in a room physically located over the negotiation hall.
Wait, how do they actually exert control here? Are they mind-controlling the kings? Because men like Henselt don't seem like the type to just take orders from a secret society.
They don't use overt mind control. They use soft power, espionage, and economic leverage.
Okay.
They have a magical listening matrix, allowing them to hear every word spoken below in real time.
Oh, that's clever.
And they aren't just reacting to the negotiations, they have predetermined the acceptable outcomes. When Henselt throws his tantrum, the sorceresses aren't worried.
Right.
They simply note that they will use their influence over his advisors, his economy, and his intelligence networks to force his hand. They allow the kings the illusion of agency while completely boxing them in structurally.
It is the ultimate shadow government. But the most cynical revelation of the entire treaty process doesn't even come from the sorceresses, does it?
No, it comes from a Nilfgaardian merchant named Baron Luvarden.
This is a pivotal moment in the historical text.
Yeah.
Ambassador Shallard is nervously pacing, worried that Nilfgaard is making too many concessions to the northern kings. He feels they are giving up too much captured territory and looking weak.
And Luvarden just laughs at him. He explains the actual mechanics of what Nilfgaard just achieved. It is a brilliant terrifying shift from military imperialism to economic imperialism.
To put it in modern terms for you listening, it's like offering an enemy a peace treaty by handing them a credit card with a 50% interest rate.
That's exactly it.
You aren't giving them freedom, you are just changing their prison bars
Yeah.
from iron to unpayable debt.
Luvardin patiently explains that Nilfgaard's scorched earth campaign in the north wasn't a mistake, it was the primary objective.
Wow.
By burning the North's fields, destroying their manufactories, and crippling their infrastructure, Nilfgaard ensured the North cannot sustain itself.
So they have to buy from Nilfgaard.
Exactly. When the peace is signed, the North will be entirely dependent on importing Nilfgaardian grain, steel, and manufactured goods.
Luvardin literally says, emperors pass and corporations survive. The entire war, with its massive casualties and grandiose rhetoric, was ultimately just hostile market takeover.
Yes.
They waged war to create a captive consumer base. The kings think they won because they got their borders back, but Nilfgaard now owns their economy.
And this transition into ruthless economic modernism requires tying up loose ends. The most tragic loose end of the war is the Scoia'tael.
The elven guerrilla fighters.
Ones who bled and died for Nilfgaard under the promise of an independent, free state.
The pawns are just swept off the board. During the negotiations, Nilfgaard casually agrees to a northern demand. They hand over 32 high-ranking elven officers to be executed as war criminals.
It's a minor addendum to an economic treaty.
The psychological cruelty of the handover is immense. The Nilfgaardian commanders assure the elven rank and file that only the officers are being taken and that the rest will receive amnesty.
But the sources note that the elves just roar with bitter laughter, fully aware that the amnesty is a hollow lie.
We get a horrific description of the executions at the port of Drakenborg. Renowned elven commanders, heroes to their people like Riordan and Angus Bree, aren't given a soldier's death.
No.
They are dragged out, forced onto stools, and strangled with the garrots while mercenaries kneel on their chests. It's an industrialized, humiliating slaughter designed to break the spirit of the remaining elves.
One officer, Isengrim Fealtiarna, the Iron Wolf, manages a desperate escape. He shatters his manacles, brutally beats the executioners, and dives through a glass window into the harbor, surviving a hail of crossbow fire.
But his escape doesn't erase the macro-level tragedy. Just as Ciri discovered that the ancient Ain-El were colonizers, we see that the modern elves of this world are utterly discarded victims of political convenience.
It's an incredibly bleak picture, but there is a tiny, beautiful detail buried in these sources that offers a counter-narrative. While the kings carve up economies and order executions, we see a wagon full of crippled, legless human veterans from the northern armies. They cross paths with a group of starving, ragged elven survivors from a broken Scoia'tael unit.
These are people who, days prior, were ordered to butcher each other.
Exactly. But when an injured elven run limps toward the wagon, a young human girl traveling with the veterans, along with the crippled soldiers themselves, silently hand over their meager rations.
Bread, cheese, sausage.
The text notes that for the first time in 1,000 years, elves hold out their hands to humans and they weep.
It proves that empathy only exists at the absolute bottom of the social hierarchy, among those who have been mutually broken by the systems above them. So what does this all mean for you listening?
It's a harsh reminder that peace treaties aren't about justice.
Right. They're about markets. It's like a corporate buyout where the executives get golden parachutes and the ground-level employees are handed over to the firing squad.
Perfectly said.
Wait, earlier we said Emperor Empire wanted Ciri to secure his rule. If the real Ciri is jumping through dimensions, who is Emhyr marrying? Who is he presenting to the world at the end of the Peace of Cintra?
That is the massive geopolitical elephant in the room. His intelligence services located a young noblewoman who bears a striking, almost uncanny resemblance to Ciri.
So a body double.
Yes, and Emhyr, being a ruthlessly calculating man, instantly recognizes she is an imposter.
Of course he does.
His initial pragmatic calculation is incredibly dark. He plans to use her to stabilize the region temporarily, and once she's no longer politically useful, he will have her quietly murdered.
It's the standard Machiavellian playbook. But then he makes a fatal error for a ruthless dictator. He actually speaks to her.
He does. He takes her for a walk in the palace gardens. They stop by a fountain depicting a pelican piercing its own breast to feed its starving young with its blood.
A heavy-handed symbol of sacrifice.
Very. Emhyr is harsh, testing her. But the girl, despite being visibly terrified of this man who has ordered the deaths of thousands, stands her ground.
She openly admits she is a fake. She expresses a profound, tragic guilt that she isn't the real Ciri, telling him she feels like a hollow double, unworthy of the life she's been thrust into.
And something inside the white flame dancing on the barrows of his enemies just breaks.
Wow.
For the first time, we see the man beneath the imperial mask. He looks at this brave, terrified girl who expects him to execute her, and he realizes he simply cannot do it. He cannot add her blood to his ledger.
He experiences a profound moment of grace. He embraces her, calling her his poor little one, and makes the decision to marry the decoy.
On a political level, it secures Sintra. But on a moral level, it spares an innocent life. It is a stunning deviation from his established pattern of ruthless utility.
So the entire known world believes the lion cub of Sintra is safely on the throne in Nilfgaard, while the true Ciri is still a lost sailor in the multiverse. The war is officially over. The treaties are signed. In the grand city of Novigrad, they throw a massive victory parade. The sources describe the fireworks, the cheering crowds, the pristine mercenary companies marching through the streets. The illusion of a happy ending is in full effect.
But the epilogue of our sources strips away that final illusion by taking us into the shadows behind the parade.
Right.
The war required spies, assassins, and intelligence networks to function. Now that peace has arrived, those networks are a liability to the new political order. We witness a brutal, silent purge of the intelligence community.
Sigismund Dijkstra, the massive, brilliant spy master of Redania, the man who arguably did more to defeat Nilfgaard than any king, realizes he is the primary target.
The people he helped put in power, likely the Lodge of Sorceresses, have sent assassins to erase him.
He barely manages to flee his office in the dead of night. But the tragedy falls on his loyal secretary, an elderly, near-blind scholar named Ori Reuven.
The assassins don't kill Reuven because his name isn't on the official kill list. Instead, he is thrown into a damp dungeon, interrogated and tortured for years, and eventually dies in complete obscurity and poverty.
It's so sad.
His life's work, a definitive history of the secret services, vanishes completely, suppressed by the new regime. It highlights how quickly the architects of power are consumed by the very machinery they built.
And that machinery forces Dijkstra into exile, leading to what I think is the most conceptually brilliant scene in all the material we've covered.
It is a phenomenal scene.
We are miles away from the fireworks of Novigrad. We are high up in the freezing, treacherous Elskerdeg Pass, deep in the wilderness. A human tracker named Boreas Munn is sitting alone at a small campfire.
Munn is starving, having been on the run for weeks. He is roasting a massive 3-foot-long mountain rat over the fire just to survive.
And as he sits there, two figures emerge from the snowy darkness to warm themselves. One is a hulking man wrapped in a pilgrim's cloak. The other is a slender man with a horrific fresh scar across his face.
The pilgrim is Dijkstra, the Redanian spymaster. The scarred man is Isengrim Faultiarna, the elven terrorist who survived the massacre at the docks.
Think about the gravity of this. You have a master spy who hunted elven rebels, the most lethal elven rebel commander on the continent, and a tracker who worked for the enemy empire.
Mortal enemies a week ago.
Locked in a geopolitical death spiral. Now, the empires they served have spat them out. It's a bizarrely heartwarming moment. You have a spy, an elven terrorist, and a tracker breaking bread because the world that created them has spat them out.
They sit around the fire, fundamentally equalized by their mutual betrayal. They discuss the peace of Sintra, and they reach a grim consensus. Everything was prostituted.
Honor, loyalty, blood, and decency were all treated as mere commodities to be traded by kings and merchants.
And then they share the roasted rat. It's strangely heartwarming, like you said. These 3 lethal, broken men breaking rat bones together in the snow.
Dijkstra introduces himself, but he doesn't use his real name. He calls himself Sigi Reuven, adopting the name of his tortured secretary to honor the man's sacrifice.
Boreas Munn just laughs and remarks that this must be the start of a beautiful friendship.
This campfire is a microcosm of the narrative's central philosophy.
Completely. The people cheering at the parade in Novigrad are blind to the reality of the world. The kings in Sintra think they control the future.
But the only people who truly understand the shape of the world are the outcasts eating rat meat in the dark. They recognize that an era has violently ended and something entirely unknown is beginning.
Which brings us back to the elven concept of the Ouroboros and how we understand history itself.
Right.
At that campfire, Isengrim notes a fundamental flaw in human historiography. Because humans have such short lifespans, they try to slice history up into neat, manageable eras with definitive beginnings and endings.
Kings believe a signature on a parchment at Sintra permanently alters the flow of time.
But the Ouroboros tells us the circle is closed.
Exactly. History isn't a straight line dictated by treaties. It is a ceaseless, churning ocean.
Political power is largely an illusion of control. The grand narrative doesn't hinge on emperors or sorceresses plotting in hidden rooms.
As Ciri's journey proves, time is an endless archipelago of isolated moments. The survival of a world doesn't depend on the kings. It depends on whether a single lost sailor, battered by the storms of the multiverse, can spot the light of the lighthouse through the fog.
It makes you wonder how much control any of us really have.
It really does. I invite you listening right now to mull over how you navigate your own archipelago of moments. When the grand systems, the governments, the economies, the expected fairy tales fail and turn on you, how do you find your way through the fog? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. See you next time.